I'm Candace Presley, Director of Community and Public Affairs at WSB-TV in Atlanta. Welcome to the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series. This is the debate among Democratic candidates for Lieutenant Governor. Let's meet the candidates for this debate. They are, in alphabetical order, Erick Allen is a Georgia State House Representative from District 40. Charlie Bailey is an attorney. Tyrone Brooks is a former City of Atlanta employee. Tony Brown is a veteran and businessman. Kwanza Hall is a former member of Atlanta City Council. Mr. Hall declined to participate and is represented by an empty podium. Jason Hayes is a physician. Derrick Jackson is a veteran and Georgia State House Representative from District 64. Rashid Malik is an entrepreneur. Mr. Malik wasn't able to make it today and is also represented by an empty podium. And Renitta Shannon is a Georgia State House Representative from District 84. Now, let's meet our panelists. Orlando Montoya is a producer for Georgia Public Broadcasting in Atlanta, Georgia. And Jill Nolan covers state and local government for the Georgia Recorder. For complete rules on today's debate, please visit the Atlanta Press Club website, atlantapressclub.org. Now, to start the debate, each candidate will be asked one question by one of the panelists. Candidates have 60 seconds to answer each question. Orlando Montoya, you get the first question for Charlie Bailey.
Good afternoon. Mr. Bailey, you spent nearly a year running for the office of Attorney General before switching to this race just less than about 4 months ago. Is this the job you want?
This is the job I want. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor because every day the vast majority of Georgians, they get up, they go to work, and they're worried about, is my kid safe? How are they doing in school? If I get a hospital bill, can I pay it? And instead of working on those issues that are closest to the hearts of the people of Georgia, our main two Republican opponents in this race are in a competition over who can be the biggest authoritarian. Theirs is a politics of hate and division. And I believe that we are all human beings, that we all love our families, and we all deserve the same dignity, the same justice, the same safety, the same opportunity to build for our families a better life than the one that we had. I'm proud to be running for Lieutenant Governor, and I intend to win this race.
Jill Nolan, it is now your turn to ask a question to Renitta Shannon.
Hi, Representative Shannon. You've made headlines for acts of protest as a state lawmaker, such as when you refused to relinquish the well during the House debate on Georgia's restrictive abortion bill in 2019, and when you led a legislative boycott of Governor Brian Kemp's first speech as governor. Will you talk about why you saw this as the most effective way, most effective strategy as a member of the minority party, and what your strategy would be as lieutenant governor if elected?
Yes, thank you for the question. So you're correct. I've always known what's at stake, and it's the reason that I did put my body on the line in 2019 when Georgia tried to outlaw abortion. I was the only legislator that went that far, and I did that because I've always known what's at stake, and I know policy well enough to be able to defend our rights. Reproductive freedom should have never been left up to the courts, and it is something that we need to codify in law. And so as Lieutenant Governor, I am the heavyweight on policy in this race, and I will work to defend Georgians as I have every single day as a state representative.
Thank you very much for that answer. Orlando, now your question for Jason Hayes.
Mr. Hayes, you've positioned yourself as the candidate who can work best with Republicans. How would you respond, though, if a Republican majority Senate stripped the Lieutenant Governor of all but token power as they did to Democrat Mark Taylor in 2002?
Yes, that's an excellent question. I fully intend this to likely happen. In the event it does, I will still continue to work with all the Republicans, even in the event if we do have a Republican governor as well. Also, I still plan to advocate on behalf of all Georgians, including those who do not have access to health insurance, and I will continue to make sure that all Georgians are represented at the highest level of Georgians' government.
Thank you, sir. Jill, now it is your turn to ask a question of Erick Allen.
Representative Allen, as a member of the Georgia House, you were an outspoken critic during the local redistricting process. Can you talk about what happened, what you think went wrong, and how you think it should be handled moving forward in a way that would be more fair in your mind.
Yeah, as chair of the Cobb County delegation, there were only 3 counties that were treated differently than the other 159. And Cobb was one of those, where I'm chair of that legislative delegation. And the reason that was so bad is not only in Cobb County did they redraw a sitting commissioner out of her seat, they also shortened her term by 2 years. And let's be honest, this is a litmus test and a balloon trial test to see if not only if votes can't be suppressed enough to not have the intended outcome that some want, that they could then correct the vote by drawing people out of a district and removing their term. In Georgia, we don't have any restrictions on mid-decennial redistricting. Our legislature can redistrict at any time. That's one thing that we need to change to make sure that we do not weaponize the redistricting process to make it a tool to remove elected officials from office.
Thank you very much. Orlando, we're now back to you, and you get to ask a question of Tyrone Brooks.
Tyrone Brooks Jr., your father, Mr. Brooks Sr., was a well-known figure in Georgia politics for 34 years. What lessons have you learned from your father's rise and fall?
Well, first of all, yes, my father was a civil rights activist, currently still a civil rights activist for over the last 60 years. And I've learned many things. My father is the greatest father in the world to me. So having the opportunity to study at his feet and other civil rights icons, I always understood the importance of civil engagement and community empowerment, standing for those who may not have a voice to speak to power. And so I just learned that you have to be an advocate for all communities, and you have to be in the community. What you do inside the Gold Dome is one thing, but what you do outside of the Gold Dome is even more important. So just learning those lessons from him is something that I'll carry into the Lieutenant Governor's office.
Jill, now you get to ask a question of Derrick Jackson.
Representative Jackson, as a member of the minority party, it can be difficult to get a bill passed, especially one of your own. Sometimes it's more about working to derail the majority party's bills. What is one bill you wish you could have stopped during your time in the House, and what did you do to try to influence the outcome?
One of the bills that I tried to stop is Senate Bill 202. As a retired naval officer, I realized that every Georgian should have the right to vote. And if I will become your lieutenant governor, I will exercise the ability in the office of the lieutenant governor to make sure that any anti-voting bill doesn't get through the legislative process. Yes, as a minority member of the minority party, I still was able to effectively get some bills passed. And so I would use the same skill set that the military has taught me, how to lead through tough times, and to make sure that I work and build a consensus across the aisle to get things done. I was able to do that with 16 pieces of legislation that are currently law in the state of Georgia because I did it because it was the right thing to do.
And Orlando, you are going to get the final question in this round, and you get to put that to Tony Brown.
Mr. Brown, you're one of the candidates on stage with no legislative experience. What other qualifications do you have to serve as Lieutenant Governor?
Yes. As an Air Force veteran and military officer, I worked at the highest level of government. Had congressional affairs under me, under Defense Intelligence Agency. I'm glad to be honored to have my uncle was a big-time politician, Verdon Brown. I'd like to give a shout-out to my aunt, which is 101 years old, 1 year or so older than my father, which was a World War II Navy individual. I've been involved in the community for 30, 40 years, trying to help people get elected and go blue. And my website is browngovernor.com. It lays out everything in there step by step. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Brown. That concludes our first round of this debate. The candidates will now ask a question of an opponent of their choice. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask the question. The other candidate has 60 seconds to respond, and the candidate who asks the question will receive 30 seconds for a rebuttal. Tony Brown, you get the first question, and please identify the candidate for whom the question is for.
Yes. Representative Jackson, the question is, why do you feel that the experience is really needed to be lieutenant governor, that you need to be in the House, have prior experience there.
Thank you for the question. Since the existence of the Lieutenant Governor's office, since the creation of the office, all 12 Lieutenant Governors came from either the House or the Senate. And the reason why is because you need legislative experience to effectively preside in the state Senate. Listen, you can clearly see that when you think about experience, you would not only you need legislative experience, but you need to understand how the process is done. And if you don't understand, one of the things that I discovered being in the legislature for 6 years is that you. My apologies. My apologies.
Take your time.
You need legislative experience because you got to have to understand that the number of pieces of legislation that we deal with, from 900 to 1,200 pieces of legislation, in order to be effective, you have to have the experience to make sure that the job is done, because that's what Georgians are expecting for the Lieutenant Governor to do. Thank you.
And, sir, you get 30 seconds to rebut that answer.
Hey, thanks. I'm one of the candidates that do not want to steal Stacey Abrams' thunder. We're all leaders here, and no one's held a position of lieutenant governor. Also, I'd like to add that Mr. Jackson didn't say he went to law school. I studied law also. And so if you just have a well-rounded individual like myself that has been in almost every industry, from teaching high school to law enforcement to healthcare, I'm well suited for this, and I want the job. Hey, thank you.
Tyrone Brooks, it is your turn to question one of your opponents.
Yes, so my question would be for Dr. Hayes. So Dr. Hayes, when I'm elected Lieutenant Governor in a few months, I support the expansion of Medicaid, and I've heard you speak before as you're a physician. I'd like to know, what else should I be focused on outside of Medicaid expansion? Because I know that's just a Band-Aid, and you've spoken quite in detail before. So I'd like to work with you once I'm elected. Could you explain some more things we should be looking at to ensure that we address the actual problem?
Absolutely. And thank you for the question. And I would look forward to working with you if you are so elected as Lieutenant Governor. As a physician, I'm also a Georgia Medicaid doctor and also have a master's in public health. I've worked in underserved communities with the National Health Service Corps. So one of the things that we do have to do is make sure we improve the reimbursement rate so physicians have the ability to see patients. And also we must make sure that we recruit hospital systems and more physicians to see patients. That is critical because Medicaid expansion alone will not close the healthcare gap for all Georgians. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Brooks, you have 30 seconds to rebut that answer.
No rebuttal. I'll just add to that I do thank you for that, first of all, Dr. Hayes. And I just simply would say, as I've been a business owner since 1995, and I do understand the challenges of providing health care for employees. So I appreciate that, Dr. Hayes.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
You're welcome.
And now, Erick Allen, please ask your question.
Well, my question was going to be for Kwanza Hall, but considering Mr. Hall is not here, I'll just ask it to the podium of, you have not been present at a lot of campaign events. Why is it that you don't want to be held accountable to the Georgian voters for this one of many jobs you have sought? And why do you not feel it important to be part of this conversation, this dialogue today?
And you would rebut that answer with?
You know, being lieutenant governor is a very important role. And majority of that is just showing up, being present, making sure that you are fighting the right fights and having the conversations the right way. And the people that you are accountable to the most are you, the viewers that are watching this debate, making the choice and the decision of who you want representing you as your next lieutenant governor. Take note of those that show up. Take note of those that do the work, and not because they hold an office or that they want an office, but because they believe in Georgia and believe in you.
Thank you very much, sir. Renitta Shannon, it is now your turn.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Representative Jackson a question. Representative Jackson, you consistently talk about the need for legislative experience before being lieutenant governor, and you also talk about your experience as a naval officer. Please tell us how your experience as a naval officer would show up in being lieutenant governor.
One of the things, thank you for the question, Renitta. One of the things I discovered when I entered the Navy in 1983, the Navy taught me how to be disciplined and to learn some leadership skills to learn how to get through tough times. The other thing that I discovered while I was in the Navy is to have the ability to work with other citizens, other sailors and other officers, regardless of their race, creed, or color, or religion. And so the military has taught me not only to be able to get through tough times, combat situations, but to be able to work with others regardless of who they are. And that's what I would do as a lieutenant governor, be able to do as I've done the last 6 years, work across the aisle to get things done for Georgians, because Georgians expect for us to do that. And that's one of the common themes that I discovered while I traveled across Georgia. Georgians are tired for the bickering politics, and I would be the one to make sure to get it done for them.
Thank you, sir, very much. And Ms. Shannon, you get a rebuttal.
First, thank you for your service, and I also have some experience that separates me from the rest of the folks in this race. I'm the only person in this race that's had the experience of directly standing up to the Trump lawyers when they came before my committee in 2020 and tried to get us to throw out the votes of Georgians. I'm also the only person in this race who's had the experience of getting the state to expand postpartum Medicaid. This was an important issue because Georgia was failing with its rate of maternal mortality. We know that access to health care is life-saving, and I'm proud of those accomplishments.
Thank you very much. Now, Jason Hayes, it's your turn to ask a question.
Yes, this question is for Attorney Charlie Bailey. You're a prosecutor and former Democratic nominee for Attorney General in 2018, and you got 49% of the vote in the general election. Although you were the most qualified person for the Attorney General's race this year, you decided to abandon your dreams after a backroom deal with politicos. Now you're in a crowded field in the Lieutenant Governor's race in which the odds of winning are less than the odds when you were in the previous Attorney General's race. How do you respond to claims that you're under the control of the political elite?
Well, you know, the folks that came to me in early December and asked me to move up to the lieutenant governor's race did so because of what they felt I could bring to a statewide ticket. And that is, as you said, Dr. Hayes, I am a proven statewide nominee. I got 49% of the vote 4 years ago against an incumbent Republican when the National Republicans spent $3.3 million in negative TV ads trying to beat me. I'm also from rural West Georgia, and, you know, bringing that perspective to the ticket, you know, half of this state is outside of metro Atlanta, and so that was a beneficial thing. Also, my service in public safety, working as a senior assistant district attorney in Fulton County to bring both equal safety and equal justice to the citizens of Georgia. That is what I bring to this race, and I'm proud to have the support of folks like Congressman Hank Johnson and Congresswoman Lucy McBath, former chair of the party, DuBose Porter, Mayor Shirley Franklin, and I stand with them, and I don't think they are engaged in any backroom deals.
Thank you, sir, very much. Now, sir, you get to rebut.
Rebuttal. Well, like many of us Georgians, including myself, we have concerns that if you became lieutenant governor, it would not be your policies. It will be former Governor Roy Bourne's policies, former Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor's policies, and the other politicos that you just mentioned. We need a leader who will have the ability to stand up to anyone in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. We have to be here for people, not for the party. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Derrick Jackson, please ask your question.
Thank you. My question is going to be for my friend Renitta Shannon. Representative Shannon, you have been a champion for reproductive justice. Please share, as Lieutenant Governor, what you would do with regards to reproductive justice, especially since the recent announcement of the Supreme Court justice in Roe v. Wade.
Well, thank you for the question. Yes, as you mentioned, I've been a champion on reproductive freedom. Reproductive freedom includes the right to have an abortion, and I've always known that, and that's one of the reasons why I did put my body on the line, standing up to Republicans against trying to filibuster a bill to outlaw abortion. As Lieutenant Governor, I would make sure that we codify the right for full reproductive freedom, not just the right to abortion, and I would put that in the Georgia Constitution.
And Mr. Jackson, you are availed a rebuttal.
Thank you, Representative Shannon, for your answer. And I, too, believe that women should have the rights over their bodies. I would like to see my 4 daughters have the same rights over their bodies as my 3 sons. and I will continue to be a champion for women's health in the state of Georgia. Thank you.
And thank you. And Charlie Bailey, you get the final question in this round.
Tyrone, we have campaigned a fair amount together in person and virtually. And one of the top things you always mention is, as a top priority of yours, is keeping communities safe. I want to give you some time to talk about, one, why that's one of your top priorities and what you think we need to do about it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for the question.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, I think economic development is tied directly to community safety. So first, I'll start there. The more opportunities you have in communities, the less crime you see in these communities. So I've had the opportunity to work in the Mayor's Office of Equity for the last 6 years, and I've been a community engagement manager, and I've gone into communities and I've listened to residents, and I've also worked with APD and the Police Athletic League and many other community partners. And what we find that people don't just commit crimes just because they want to commit crimes. It's not cool. It's not something that people just want to do. What we find is that if you have more opportunities there, you can create partnerships in the community, and you can assure that you will see more people gravitating toward those opportunities. So first thing I like to do is ensure that we have everyone at the table, our private sector, our corporate partners, our law enforcement, our public schools, our municipalities, and most importantly, our residents, discussing the issues, but most importantly, identifying the solutions. You start there, you listen to the partners, and most importantly, you have to have robust youth engagement and, more importantly, community empowerment.
That's time. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Bailey, you do get to rebut 30 seconds.
And I agree with you on all that, and we have to have a well-rounded approach when you're looking at something as complicated as crime. But we also, I would say, we have to put equal justice and equal safety at the forefront. And these Republicans have been in charge for 20 years, and they haven't done anything about keeping our community safe and having equal justice for our folks. We got one person at the GBI right now processing ballistics, resulting in 10, 11-month backlogs. We can do a lot better on public safety.
Thank you very much. Now, that concludes our second round. For those just joining us, this is the debate between the Democratic candidates for Lieutenant Governor. Kwanza Hall and Rashid Malik declined to participate, and both are represented by empty podiums. We will now go back to the panel to ask questions to the candidate of their choice until we are out of time. And as a point of moderator privilege, I may also ask questions of the candidates, and I will determine when a rebuttal is appropriate. Jill Nolan, you're going to get the first question in this round.
All right. I'd like to ask this of everyone, starting with Representative Shannon. If elected, you're likely to preside over a Republican-controlled Senate. Considering that, what would be your legislative agenda, and how would you work with Republicans to get it passed?
Thank you for the question. So let me be clear. I will never stop trying to pass our agenda, and I'll be relentless in passing Democrats' agenda. But I've had the experience of working with Republicans and working with them successfully. I worked with the House Budget Chairperson to expand postpartum Medicaid, and that is something that Democrats have been pushing to do. So I would continue to use my same skills that I used to get that done to work with Republicans where there is alignment. But let me be clear, I will stand up for our values. As far as priorities, my priorities would be expanding Medicaid fully for Georgians throughout the state, ending mass incarceration, paying workers a livable wage, and also protecting voting rights.
Next candidates with the same question to all of the candidates. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I, too, will continue to carry out the agenda for the people. Health care, Medicaid expansion is an absolute necessity for our state. As you continue to see that nearly 620,000 Georgians with little to no health care. Over 70 counties do not have an OBGYN. Over 60 counties do not have a pediatrician. And we need to make sure that we still address health care because we're still in this pandemic. The second thing that we need to address is public education. I truly believe that education is the passport to success. And when I have traveled across Georgia, I quickly realized that our education should not be based on the proximity to Atlanta. We need broadband, and not only we need broadband, but we need to make sure that our children have the capability of learning regardless where they are, rural, urban, and suburban Georgia.
Thank you. Dr. Hayes?
Excellent question. Where I live and work in House District 49, I actually ran for state rep in 2020, and also ended up getting 47.2% of the vote. Although I did not flip that seat, I ended up getting the support from Democrats, but also the respect of Republicans. I live with Republicans. I work with them as a physician. So I would go to the Republican-led State House and also the Republican-led Senate and let them know that I'm a Georgia Medicaid doctor, and the answer is healthcare access. We may not be able to pass Georgia Medicaid expansion, but I have the experience and also the background necessary to make sure that we get doctors to underserved areas, and also to make sure that patients have access to affordable health insurance. Second, also make sure that education is important and paramount for young people. We must teach about economic growth for them and also put them in an opportunity to learn about trade skill opportunities. 3, we must have economic growth in all communities. And 4, we must protect the right to vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brown.
Yes. Again, I announced I was going to run for lieutenant governor over 2 years ago. So I want the job. I lay out in browngovernor.com 7 things, and that's all based on my industry. One of the main focuses that I want to focus on is dual enrollment, due to the fact that education is important, and Governor Kemp and the previous Republicans, they have been changing the program. My daughter ended up becoming one of the youngest meteorologists at 19 years old. Also, I want to do fairness when I get in there. Governor Kemp would not allow me to run for tax commissioner. And it's a shame that we have to go through all these attorneys and so forth for the fairness of all that. And one more other thing is, I do not want to steal Stacey Abrams' thunder. We're all strong leaders, and we don't want to overshadow. One of my good friends, Winston Sears, became the first African-American female lieutenant governor of Virginia on the Republican side. So it's important to influence and...
That's time, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Brooks, how do you get legislation passed if it is the House and the Senate are controlled by the other party?
Yes, thank you for the question. Well, obviously, as lieutenant governor, you are lieutenant governor of Democrats, Republicans, independents, and everyone else. So you have to understand you're going in, if you want war with the other side, that's probably what they'll give you. So you need to identify exactly where you think you can work with the Republicans, but I'll be matter of fact about it. I won't abandon my morals, and I definitely won't abandon the progress that we are putting in place as a Democratic Party for our residents. So identifying where you can work with them. My platform is economic development, community safety, and equity. I've traveled the state of Georgia for years, and I often find that no one is in disagreement about ensuring that there's more money in our communities, ensuring that our businesses are in place to hire more people in the zip code, hire youth from our local public schools and our technical colleges. So I'd like to start there. Focus on our economy, expanding our economy, modernizing our economy, ensuring that we bring in more taxable revenue so that we can begin to reinvest in our public safety, our public schools, and the likewise. This is where I'll start. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Charlie Bailey.
Yes, and in this hypothetical, I think we'd have a Governor Abrams as well. And so my first job as Lieutenant Governor, you're going to be the right-hand man to a Governor Abrams. The top priority is Medicaid expansion. That's the first thing we want to get done. It's an abject moral failing that the Republicans have not expanded Medicaid over the past 12 years. We've got 600,000 Georgians that could have health coverage if we did that. And like I said, I'm from a rural part of the state. We've had 8 rural hospitals close over the last 10 years. So I plan on making the individual arguments. Most folks think we'll be dealing with maybe a 6-seat deficit in the state Senate. We need 6 Republicans to come along. We're going to make those individual arguments to folks who have a lot of constituents that could benefit from getting health care, have a lot of constituents that don't want to have to drive an hour 45 minutes if they have a heart attack to get to an emergency room. So we're going to work to get that done, and I'm not assuming the Republicans are just going to stand in the way, but make no mistake, if they do stand in the way of that kind of progress, I'll raise more money to defeat them in 2 years than has ever been raised in the history of this state.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bailey. And Mr. Allen, you get the final minute on this question.
Well, thank you for the question. And let's be clear, it will be a GOP-controlled Senate. And this is where experience comes in, because we're already at war in those chambers. Being in that room, I can tell you now, this is not checkers. We need a lieutenant governor who understands this is 3-dimensional chess. It's not just about what you get passed through the Senate. You've also got to work across the hall with the Speaker Ralston, who is going to do everything he can to derail the agenda. So we need people that understand not only the process, but the people and the right policy. I'm simply going to focus on 4 pillars: economic justice, environmental justice, education justice, and health justice. Everything we need to do to make your life better fits into those buckets. And as your next Lieutenant Governor, that's going to be my daily focus.
Thank you very much, sir. Orlando Montoya, it is now your turn to ask a question of a candidate or of the candidates.
I would like to ask the question of all the candidates, because it does look like the U.S. Supreme Court could be on the verge of overturning Roe versus Wade. This from the news today. What is your opinion on abortion, and what's in your playbook as Lieutenant Governor, should you be Lieutenant Governor, for what you would do if Roe is overturned? And perhaps we can go in the opposite way from Mr. Allen to Ms. Shannon.
Well, thank you for the question. And to be clear, I don't think it's any doubt that Georgia will quickly move to try to outright ban abortions. In 2019, as my colleague Representative Shannon was talking about, when she put her body on the line for the protection of a woman's right to choose, there was also a representative that had a trigger bill waiting to be heard in committee and passed that was specifically designed that if this event happens, Georgia would automatically eliminate the ability for a woman to have access to the health care she needs. So this is not a hypothetical. I think we are in a moment where we have to start resetting the battlefield of what is next after Roe is gone. We have to codify Roe not only in law, but in the Constitution, that is an inalienable right for every single woman in Georgia to have the privacy of making the choice of what she does for her body.
Charlie Bailey?
If this draft turns out to be true, and if it turns out to be the opinion of the court, it will be a decimation of the rights of women, the right to privacy, and the right to personal liberty. That draft opinion, and I read a good bit of it, it is as legally unreasonable as it is unsafe and unfair. What they're doing with this opinion, if it becomes a decision of the court, is to go after the very right to personal liberty that gives folks the right to use contraception. It gives same-sex partners the right to marry each other. It gives me the right to marry the woman I love that has a different skin color than I do. It's that bedrock right to privacy that exists in the 14th Amendment that is being threatened. If I'm elected your Lieutenant Governor, we are going to work to codify the protections of Roe v. Wade under our state right to privacy, and I will work every day, and I will always defend a woman's right to choose and the right to privacy and liberty of our citizens.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Brooks, it's your turn.
Well, yes, obviously, there's going to be consensus here, I believe. I don't agree with the decision. I think it sets us back to the dark ages, and I just don't believe in telling a woman in particular what she should and shouldn't do with her body. It's not my role to tell anyone anything about what to do with their body. So I don't believe in it. I don't support it. What I will say is I will work with the advocates. I work with all of our legislators to identify what exactly we should do. I don't think there's an exact fix to it. If this decision comes down, we will fight it. There's nothing we can repeal at the state level. We'll have to see what comes down. But I simply don't support any blockage of what a woman should be able to do with her body. They should have the right to choose.
And we now turn to Mr. Brown.
Yes, one of the things I would do is definitely focus on they've never came up with when the right of the baby to exist. And that's the big key of everything. It's just like Obamacare. You have to keep staying focused on pre-existing conditions. So that's one of the influences I would always keep repeating and that will get you farther than anything if they keep focusing on that. And again, as Lieutenant Governor, I will influence that, have committees, commissions, and try to bring the influence with the most highly educated universities and professors and so forth, and have a great argument.
Thank you very much. Dr. Hayes.
Yes, I agree with the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology that abortion care is women's health care. This will be a travesty if abortions are not made available to women. There are situations where an abortion is needed medically, and also situations that occur where abortion should be an option. So as Lieutenant Governor, what I would do is make sure that I commission a committee to have all the key stakeholders involved, including abortionists, OBGYNs, pediatricians, and other individuals who are stakeholders, and we must come up with a game plan. In addition, we must work with the federal government. We must work with individuals such as Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff to make sure that we protect the rights of all women. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Derrick Jackson.
Abortion is a health care decision that should be a private matter between a woman, her family, and her doctor. A patient's private information is a sacred trust that should not be violated, no matter what a man or men in the legislature think. Part of our jobs as leaders is to protect the rights of all citizens, regardless of their gender, which sometimes means respecting the right of others. Government should not be in the business of picking winners and losers based on their morality, but instead should safeguard the rights of the individual to choose for themselves. We cannot call ourselves a free nation if we continue to insist to making decisions for others, and abortion should be left to a woman to decide. Thank you.
And the last word on this question will go to Representative Shannon.
Yes. So I was the first in this debate to say that I would not leave our rights up to the courts, that I would put in legislation, codify it in law to solidify our rights. But I also want to say that the decision the leaked papers that we saw yesterday was not a surprise to me, because I have been doing the work. Every single time that we have seen bills come up in the legislature to chip away at reproductive freedom, I have been right there organizing my caucus. And we saw this most recently when we had a bill to ban getting medication abortion through telemedicine. So access to abortion is health care, and access to health care is life-saving. That's not debatable.
Thank you very much. And Jill, before I come to you for your next question, I'd like to go back to Mr. Brown, because on this last question about a woman's right to choose and abortion as a health care right for women, you stated what you would do if you were elected lieutenant governor. But if I heard Mr. Montoya's question, he was more interested in what is your position on that issue? What is your position on the issue?
Well, I'm a constitutionist, and we have to fight, and I will go with whatever the assembly, agrees with. And of course, the governor has the veto power. I will do my job as a lieutenant governor and break the tie. And so based on what the people want in your area, that's how I will roll.
Ms. Nolan, you get the next question for a candidate or all of the candidates.
Thank you. I have another hypothetical question, and it's for everyone, but maybe it'll be a shorter response time. Last year, outgoing Republican Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan made national news whenever he refused to preside over the vote on SB 202. If you had been in his shoes, what would you have done? How would you have handled SB 202? We'll start with Representative Allen.
Yeah, this is where I talk about it important to make sure you have a lieutenant governor that's a fighter. What Jeff Duncan did was, although he knew that the wrong thing was occurring, he went in his office and hid and didn't stay for the fight. This is completely opposite of what my record is a proven track of. I do stay and fight. I stand up for what I believe in. I stand up for the principles. There are others in this race who don't stand up for fights or haven't stood in a fight. There are some who found themselves in the first political fight of their career and jumped into a completely different race. There are others who choose not to show up for debates and have the dialogue and conversation. We need a lieutenant governor who is ready to fight for everyday Georgians and win for you.
Mr. Bailey, I think you get a rebuttal to that.
Well, I think you've probably been in some fights. Eric, I've been in some political fights. I'd say that in 2018, when the Republican Attorney General's Association, the same organization that helped fund what became an insurrection, spent $3.3 million trying to beat me, that was a fight where I stood up for our democratic principles. So I think we both fight for our democratic principles.
Thank you very much, sir. And now, Charlie Bailey, to answer the question that we have. Yeah, what Lieutenant Governor Duncan did. See, the Lieutenant Governor's got the power to appoint folks. You decide who sits on what committee. You decide who chairs what committee, and you decide what
committee a bill, once it's filed, goes to. Had I been lieutenant governor, I would have made sure SB 202 went to a committee. It wouldn't have never seen the light of day again. And if they'd have filed another one, I would have stuck it in a committee. It would have never seen the light of day again. So, and when it, so it would have never gotten to the point where they were voting for it on the floor. And I will use the power of lieutenant governor to defend voting rights if they try to further restrict them. And once I am lieutenant governor, we're going to look at repealing SB 202 and giving back the rights and opening up access to the ballot box that every citizen of this state deserves to have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brooks.
Yeah, this is personal to me. My father's fought for voting rights before I was even born. So to see, first of all, you have to have the intestinal fortitude. If you're going to be lieutenant governor, do the job. If you're going to back a bill, back the bill. If you don't back the bill, you put it in a committee and you kill it, as you heard before, and you're here again. But I simply believe that, again, I agree with Charlie here. We have to repeal it, and we're going to have, I think we're also going to have to force our federal Congress to pass the John Lewis voting rights. First of all, that will solidify the voting rights in the entire nation. Leaving it to states is going to create this backlog and this back and forth, but I don't think that Jeff Duncan really wanted to get in that fight. And again, I say if you don't have the intestinal fortitude to stand for the fight or kick the bill to a committee to kill it, you shouldn't be lieutenant governor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brooks. Tony Brown now, if you had been the lieutenant governor, how would you have handled SB 202?
I definitely would have, if we had a Republican governor. So I definitely would have stopped it. I would have went to the committee. I would have, again, made my voice loudly, influenced the opposite direction, and killed it right then and there.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes, what Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan did was wrong. I mentioned before that you have to put people before the party. Clearly, he did not do that. And as Lieutenant Governor, I would have killed that bill and made sure that everyone in the chamber understood why. We must protect the right to vote. Regardless of what anyone says, we must allow people their constitutional right to cast their ballot. Thank you.
Representative Jackson?
This is near and dear to me. I'm the only candidate in this race that's been fighting for voting rights, civil rights, and our democracy since 1983. I, too, will be one that, if I be elected to be your lieutenant governor, to immediately repeal Senate Bill 202. What Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan did, he could have did the same thing he did for that whole fight around Buckhead City. He could have simply took Senate Bill 202 and stuck it in a committee knowing that that bill was going to die. Nor did he preside over the state Senate. When you're the lieutenant governor, you have to make sure that you understand this process, and you have to have the legislative experience to execute the will of the people. Listen, our Georgians want to have the ability to vote, and Senate Bill 202 goes against the heart of that. I will be your lieutenant governor that will continue to fight and defend our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Shannon, you get the last word on this question.
Thank you. So if I were lieutenant governor, that bill would have never come to the floor. I'm the only person in this race that's actually had the experience of serving on the Governmental Affairs House Committee, which deals with election law. So I'm the only person that's had frontline experience fighting voter suppression bills. I know that every Georgian deserves access to the ballot. I'm also the only candidate that's had the experience of having to stand up to the Trump lawyers to protect our votes. And so standing up to Senate Republicans, that's just a Monday for me. If I were lieutenant governor, I know that that would mean that we would have Stacey Abrams as governor, and she and I would never sign anything that would restrict the right for Georgians to vote. The other thing is, having served on governmental affairs, it's not just, I know this, it's not just SB 202. There's been bill after bill that has been passed that works to have the effect of voter suppression, and I'm ready to move legislation on day one as lieutenant governor to make sure that everyone has access to be able to vote.
Orlando Montoya, I think you're going to get the last question for our candidates.
Well, I haven't heard any of the candidates but briefly mention one Democratic priority for many Democratic voters, and that is the environment and climate change. And a flooding, drought, severe storms, even mosquito season is becoming all worse here in Georgia because of this. So what role do you see for Georgia in climate change action and your role specifically in Lieutenant Governor, should you be Lieutenant Governor, in combating it. And perhaps we can go in the reverse order, starting with Ms. Shannon to Mr. Allen.
And only 30 seconds to answer this question because we are almost out of time.
Thank you for the question. So what I would do is work with agencies and strengthen the EPA and work with agencies in the state to make progress on climate change. I would also move legislation that would make sure that the largest polluters are the ones who are having to make the changes. A lot of times on this issue, folks are asking individuals to solve the climate change issue. And while it's important that individuals do their part, what we really need is to make sure that we have legislation, that we have laws on the books that really work to change what's going on with climate change.
Derrick Jackson, 30 seconds.
I'm the only candidate that's running for Lieutenant Governor that's traveled 104 miles along our coastline to make sure that not only we protect our coastline, but I sit on the Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications Committee and thinking about mixed energy to make sure that we have clean air to breathe and fresh water to drink. I want to be your next Lieutenant Governor to make sure that climate control is on the top 5 of the priorities for the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Dr. Hayes, 30 seconds.
Yes, I'm the only candidate that is a scientist. Therefore, I would commission a committee with all of the stakeholders involved to make sure that we protect our environment. I also grew up in Louisiana, where we are always under siege from hurricanes. So I understand how we must protect our coastline to make sure it's not eroding and make sure we don't have any storm surges. And I would make sure that we get all these cars off the road. We've got to reduce carbon emissions and improve transportation here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
I love this subject. When I was stationed at Vandenberg Air Force Base in the 80s, I was under missile test group in the shuttle program. I also took environmental classes at Vermont Law School, one of the leading environmentalists. And it's great that I have my daughter, which is a meteorologist. So I'm a very big fan on the environment, and I've studied it, and I will continue to push in that direction.
Tyrone Brooks.
Yes, as I stated before, working in the Office of Equity, one of my roles was a senior grants manager for the sustainability team. And over those years, I identified over $18 million for various sustainability projects. So I had the opportunity to work with environmentalists and environmental advocates. And I've also been pushing for, if you check my website, I've been pushing for an Office of Equity to be established at the state level. In that Office of Equity at the state level, you'd have a focus on the environment. Therefore, we'd be able to get points and draft legislation out of that office. So I'll continue to do the same there.
Charlie Bailey, 30 seconds.
Climate change is real, and the Republicans that have been in charge of the state for 20 years not only have not addressed it, but they've made it worse. They've given our tax dollars to special interest tax breaks to corporate polluters so that they could pollute more, clog our roads, make it harder to move goods and services, make it harder for folks to get to school and to work. We're going to have a comprehensive plan to address climate change. It's going to include having diversified transportation options, including mass transit, investing in those, and investing in solar, water, and other clean energy sources so that we can have a clean and bountiful state for our people.
All right there. Thank you very much. And Erick Allen, you get the last 30 seconds on this question.
Well, thank you. In 2019, July of 2019, my district was one of the ones that was impacted and found out that there was a cancer-causing gas being emitted by a multinational billion-dollar company. I'm that guy that took them on head-on, not only got legislation passed to strengthen the restrictions on their fugitive emissions, but also worked with community leaders and stakeholders to make sure that we got that plant shut down. I have a perfect rating with the Georgia Conservation voters, and my record I am extremely proud of on the environmental issues.
Erick Allen, thank you very much. And everyone, that is all the time that we have for questions. Each candidate will now have 60 seconds to make a closing statement. Erick Allen, you will get the first closing statement.
Well, I want to make this about you. You see, I understand Georgians don't wake up every morning thinking about the lieutenant governor. You're thinking about your family. You're thinking, is your child in school safe and learning? Do you have access to quality health care? And can you afford the basic necessities of life, like eggs and milk and gas? You see, you don't think about the lieutenant governor, but you deserve a public servant who will think of you. See, I've taken on Republicans in elections and I've won. I've gotten legislation through a Republican General Assembly. And I've only thought about running for lieutenant governor as a statewide race. See, you need a lieutenant governor who is not only committed, and understands the role of lieutenant governor, but also understands the assignment. And the assignment is to get the Abrams agenda passed to her desk, signed into law, so that all of us, when that assignment is complete, can say that children have a quality education, that 500,000 more Georgians have access to health care, and that the attack on a woman's rights and voting rights is no longer an issue.
Thank you very much, sir. Charlie Bailey, next.
I'm Charlie Bailey, and I'm running for lieutenant governor because every day the vast majority of Georgians, they get up, they go to work, and they're worried about, is my kid safe? How are they doing in school? If I get a hospital bill, can I pay it? And instead of working on those issues that are closest to the everyday lives of the people of Georgia, our main two Republican opponents in this race are engaged in a conversation about who can be the biggest authoritarian. Theirs is a politics of hate and division that says not everybody's vote does matter the same, and not everybody's child matters the same, and not everybody's community matters the same. Well, I believe that we are all human beings, that we all love our families, that we all deserve the same dignity, the same respect, the same safety, the same justice, the same opportunity to build that life for our kids that's better than the one that we had. I'm proud to be endorsed by Congressman Hank Johnson, Congresswoman Lucy McBath, former Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin, and I promise you this, you stand with me in this election and you will never have to apologize, and you will always know my friend Charlie, he fights for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. Tony Brown, it's your turn.
Yes. I just want to have you guys connect with Brown. As you can see, as a former educator, law enforcement, healthcare, and I want to thank my Christian friends out there also, being a gospel minister. It's important that I will be your advocate, and that's because I care. Married to a social worker, have 3 children, and I've been working hard in this state for years, and I will continue to be an advocate and your champion. So again, if you go to browngovernor.com and reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. Renitta Shannon, please give us your closing statement.
Lots of candidates will tell you what they want to do, but I'll show you receipts of what I've actually gotten done. From leading this successful effort to expand postpartum Medicaid in the state, to figuring out a way to get workers paid their unemployment when DOL closed its doors, to standing up to the Trump lawyers to protect your right to vote, I know how to get the job done. From Working Families Party to NARAL to New Georgia Project PAC, the organizations that you trust me to lead. I'm running for lieutenant governor because regressive policies have shaped a harsh reality for far too many Georgians, particularly working Georgians. We need a lieutenant governor who's going to fight for our collective future. That person is me. I'm Renitta Shannon.
Thank you very much. Tyrone Brooks, it is your turn.
Well, yes, I'm running for lieutenant governor because, first of all, I love Georgia, I believe in Georgia, and I consider myself Georgia itself. I embody everything this great state has to offer. I look at this state, and once I travel it, I hear from people all the time stating, you know, we want something different. We keep electing the same people. We keep giving the same results. So the only way you're going to change that is going for new ideas, bold initiatives. That's what I represent. My $1 billion plan is to identify 20 feeder counties in Georgia and generate $50 million in each of those counties without using $1 of government spending. I've been able to do that over the last 17 years, working in venture capital, funding over 150 businesses, and seeing the effect that has on those communities. We need to take that statewide. It's time that we legalize cannabis in this state for recreational use and generate those billions of dollars in revenue, bringing those thousands of jobs here. We need casinos. We need to bring back the horse racing bill that was just voted down. These are the bold initiatives that is going to expand our community, ensure that we have self-sufficient communities instead of dependent communities. It's time to be bold, Georgia. Vote Tyrone Brooks Jr. for lieutenant governor.
Thank you very much, sir. Derrick Jackson, would you please give us your closing statement?
This is not about me. This is about you, Georgia. This is about the families that I had the opportunity to talk about what's on their heart and mind. And I've heard you loud and clear. Leadership matters, experience matters, and I'm the only candidate with a heart filled with compassion and grace, meeting you where you are. When you think about your lieutenant governor, you want to make sure that that lieutenant governor have the capability and the capacity to get things done across all 159 counties, all 537 cities. It's important that we make sure that we elect the right candidate for lieutenant governor. Go to DerrickJackson.org and let's continue to have the conversation because I want to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jason Hayes, you get the final closing statement.
Thank you so much. To the American people of Georgia, do not be deceived. We have some great people who are candidates here, individuals who are state representatives, individuals who are supported by retired career politicians. These individuals had their chance under the Gold Dome, and what have they done for you? Do you have better health care? Are you under siege in your neighborhoods? You need to start looking at different candidates. Do what you did in 2020 when you elected Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff. Look at me, Dr. Jason Hayes. I'm a small business owner, physician. I've done work as a congressional intern. I've advocated for people on the state level and federal level. I also have a small business, and I understand what happened during COVID-19, not only as a doctor, but as a small business owner. So vote for someone like myself. Go to www.jasonhayes4forga.com and learn more about me. Let's heal Georgia. Thank you.
That concludes our debate. We'd like to remind voters that Election Day is Tuesday, May 24th, and early voting is underway. Our thanks to the candidates and to our panel of journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging today's debate. For more information about the debates that they will host this season, visit atlantapressclub.org. I'm Candace Presley. Thank you for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series.